Welcome. Before we begin, please be aware that our discussions on mental health issues may include sensitive topics and situations that could be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised, and if you find these subjects distressing, we encourage you to seek support or skip episodes that may be uncomfortable for you. Your well being is important to us. Welcome to Healing Echoes, Rebuilding Life After Trauma and Abuse. I'm your host, Caitlin Stead, and on Healing Echoes, we will be discussing how to overcome some of the darkest times of life and the scars that they can leave behind, all while aiming to eliminate the stigma around trauma, abuse, mental illness, and neurodivergence. Together, we can create ripples of positive change and amplify the healing echoes in our lives. Today we have with us Keirstin Proud. Keirstin is the founder of Life's Magic, a mother of one amazing child, author, creator of the podcast Rising Behind the Shadows, a trauma-informed soul coach and guide, hypnotist, psychic medium, life activation practitioner, and much more. Keirstin is passionately committed to leading individuals on a profound inner journey, guiding them to explore the depths of their being and uncover their true essence, empowering them to embrace and manifest their fullest life potential. Hey, Keirstin, how are you doing?
Hi, Caitlin. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course, thank you for coming on.
So exciting.
Yes, can you share a bit about your personal journey of healing and recovery after experiencing trauma or abuse? What were some pivotal moments or strategies that helped you in that process?
Oh, it's a loaded question. So I think my personal journey is probably a lot different than most people. I spent many years in depression, but it's like one of those hidden like depression type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to hide the depression. So I on the outside I looked like I was fun, quirky, and bubbly, and then on the inside I was just dying inside. So it was like I put on a facade really well that life was great, and it's like that toxic positivity in a sense outside of, but inside of me it was like I was literally didn't want to be alive. And it wasn't until my 30s that it got really bad in a sense of recklessness and putting myself in situations where I could possibly die. And then at one point, I just came up as I just didn't want to live anymore. And so I was like praying to the higher power to just take my life in any way, shape, or form. So I was like going through my head about every situation that could possibly happen in the natural way,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing was happening. So about a year and a half went by of me, preparing and trying to come up with a solution of how to do this to end my life on my own, um, in a strategic way, so I wouldn't leave any, dots, any I's without dots, or you didn't cross my T's. So I planned it out. And I know that's not normal for others. And a lot of the time it's spur of the moment, but for me, it was really, really planned out. And I really wasn't expecting to be alive the next day. And so in a sense, what pushed me there is I have a lot of mental stuff from my childhood, and sexual abuse when I was a teenager. I was raped at 14. And so that journey throughout was just like, in a sense, slowly killing me inside. I didn't know how to express it, I didn't know how to deal with it. And I lost my job. And then it was just like everything went downhill. I put myself in abusive relationships, and
Okay.
one almost killed me. And and it was after that moment that he did not.
Mm-hmm.
That I was like, all right, well, I guess I have to do this myself. And so I planned it all out and everything. And the next morning I woke up and I just knew that if I'm alive today, I have to do something with my life and I have to heal.
Mhm.
So ever since that day of waking up after trying to end my life, I've been on this like quest, I guess, in a sense, to find a way to heal me.
Right.
And throughout that journey, it's expanded. Um, and not only have I, discovered ways to help myself, but also found ways that might help others, so that they don't have to go through depression, so that they don't have to live through the horror of PTSD and CPTSD.
Mhm.
And so it's been this long journey of really digging, I guess, in a sense, not
Right.
just for myself, but for just how the mind works, how the body works, how energy works, and what is it about, you know, the depression and trauma that causes depression, and how, it's just, I've always been very curious person
Mhm.
anyway, and it just like I just went into this mode of, all right, that's it, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to do something about it.
Right.
And so ever since then it's just been this constant evolving, I guess, in a sense is the right word.
Mhm.
um every year is a new thing that pops up, and everything, it just is it's constant, it's a constant daily work.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, let me just say I'm sorry for everything that you've
Oh,
experienced and had to go through. Um, and that you even felt like doing that, like not being alive.
yeah.
But I'm glad that no one ever did anything to you. I'm glad that your
Yeah,
plan didn't work out. And
yeah, me too.
yeah, I mean, obviously, if it didn't, you were meant to be here. You have a purpose. Um, so my next question is, many survivors find it really challenging to reach out for support.
Mhm.
So, what advice would you give to someone who might be hesitant to seek help or to share their story?
Oh, don't be like me. Honestly, I mean, because yeah, I struggled. I didn't share. I didn't feel like I could share. And I think it all had down to that representation of I didn't want people to know the pain that I was going through. And I didn't want to be a burden on other people, so I didn't share it. And that was probably the worst thing I could possibly do, right? And I think that's like
Right.
the number one thing that from talking to my own clients and friends who suffer from depression, is that they don't want to be a burden.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with self-worth. So that's all connected, right? When
Hmm.
we don't have, any self-esteem, it becomes that we feel like we're a burden on everybody's life and we're not worthy enough to be here. And so seeking as much support as you could possibly find. I guess it doesn't matter if someone's not listening, try to find that person that's going to listen. Your parents, your family most likely are not the people you want to go to if you're in that position. So seeking out trusted sources, as much as you possibly can, and finding the one, like if that one therapist isn't working, find a different therapist. If that therapist isn't working, find a different thing. If the therapy is not working, find something else. And that is something that I learned after living, was like, all right, well, I'll just continue trying until it happens, right? And I mean, it's hard, because when you're in that mindset of that deep despair and really don't, you end up getting to a point where you just don't care anymore.
Right.
That it's like, what are those, like catch 22s, right?
Yeah, because you need the help, but you don't really even care about getting it at that point.
Yeah, it's a weird, I had plenty of friends to talk to. I had plenty of people that I could have reached out to.
Hmm.
And in a sense, I really didn't want them to tell me I didn't. Yes,
Yeah.
right? I didn't want them to tell me, no, that you're not going to do that. I'm going to get you help. And because I wanted my life to end.
Right.
And I know that's not the case for everybody. And, even I talk to my own clients and everything. And, I'm so glad that they have reached out because that's, say it wasn't the case for me. And it's not the case for everybody. Some people
Mhm.
really don't want to live anymore. But at the same time, it's like, how do you get through to those types of people? For instance, how would I have gotten through to myself, in that state? And I'm still working on trying to answer that question. I'll be honest, because I I don't know if it would actually have worked. Would a helpline actually help? I don't know if it would have for myself. I mean, we're talking like, 11, 12 years ago.
Mhm.
And, things are different, a lot different now. And the resources,
Mhm.
that are out there. And I mean, I had a therapist, and it just, wasn't really working in a sense
Right.
of for what I needed, because again, it's that mentality of you really don't want to live anymore. So what's the point?
Yeah.
And trying to get through to people like that, I think we have to do things before they get to that point, right?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like what I've been working on, for trying to figure that out for other people.
Yeah. How to
How
help
can
them before they get to that point.
Right, because getting to that point, you're, I mean, it's somewhat a lost cause in a sense. When somebody makes up their mind in that way, unless somebody is literally dragged to a facility out of their, but that doesn't even mean that it would, because there's so many stories of like people have been in um Baker acted and all that stuff,
Mhm.
and yet they still do it.
Yeah, it really has to
And
come from within.
yeah, they have to want to be helped. So how do we get to that point of getting to them before they get to that point?
Right.
And that's, I think, the most challenging aspect is, getting to those people. How, have they reached out to people and they just were rejected? So
Right.
how many resources can we get out there to people to see that there is so much more to life
Mhm.
than the situation they're in right now?
Yeah. So it sounds like you were doing some of the self advocating. You were in therapy. So it sounds like you were trying to. So I see that that has been
Yeah.
part of your journey. But what would you say to survivors on ways that they could advocate for themselves and others?
Find what works for them first.
Right. That there's not
Um,
just one way.
there's not just one way. I mean, there really isn't. And I mean, what's going to work for me is not going to work for you. What's going to work for you is not going to work for somebody else. So it is about being almost like putting yourself as like the experiment, right?
Hmm.
It's like I like science, so I kind of put that in my mind. Like I'm my experiment,
Right.
and I am going to figure out a way to help heal myself, my brain, and get rid of all of this. Because I was like at that point, like, if I can't didn't kill myself, how
Mhm.
am I supposed to, it's like, how am I supposed to live? So
Yeah. But where do I go from here?
yeah. So finding resources as much as you possibly can, like, even if it seems crazy and
Hmm.
like out of the whim, and I know some people don't like woo woo, but that woo woo is what saved my life in a sense. And if I didn't go that course, who's to say that I
Hmm.
wouldn't try to, end my life again?
Exactly.
And it was just, I tried and I searched and I listened and I made myself my own experiment.
Hmm.
um and trans it's all about, I guess, in a sense of putting that into your mind, your own mind, of like, all right, well, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I've been there, I've done that. Now what? So be your own experiment,
I
in
like
a
that.
sense, is probably the way that I would say, to help people realize that that is you. I mean, you're your own experience. It's your life.
Yeah.
So try to everything. I've heard so many people like, oh, well, I don't believe in that. Well, but what you're using and what you're doing isn't helping.
Right.
So why not try something that you quote and don't believe in? You know,
Hmm.
if it helps other people and it's proven to help other people, why block that from yourself? So
Right.
being open to things that you wouldn't normally be open for, because obviously what you were using, what doing before wasn't working. So there has to be something to change.
Right. So it's better to use all your resources than just one and have it not help.
Yeah.
Kind of try to find what works best for you, especially since we're all different.
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone's energy different. And just because one person doesn't, mingle with you with the therapy doesn't mean someone else's won't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So healing isn't a linear process, and setbacks definitely happen. I know we've discussed mine before, so we know that they're possible. Could you talk about a time when you faced a setback in your healing journey and how you navigated yourself through that?
Oh man. When isn't there a setback? I'll be honest, it's not like my biggest quote is like life is like a roller coaster ride.
Mm.
It's like you're blindfolded on a roller coaster ride. You don't know what's coming up. You don't know what's gonna come to the next turn. You don't know if it's gonna be a loop de loop. So it really is about taking every moment. And for a while, like I thought I wasn't healing and I thought this and I thought that because I was still having issues. I was still having all this stuff. But there's so many layers, and especially with trauma, there's so many layers within trauma because it's years and years and years of self-loathing and self-doubt and self-sabotage and
Mm.
trauma and PTSD, and I mean there's so many layers to it.
Oh yeah.
And each layer, it's like you're peeling away of that. I use the lotus instead of the onion. I like the lotus, smells better.
I agree.
So it's like peeling away each petal of the lotus is each area of just working through all your stuff. And there's gonna be setbacks. There's gonna be feelings of despair. And honestly, that's the journey. And that's the reason why a lot of people are so depressed, is because they don't allow themselves to experience the pain and the anguish and the grief and the sadness. And when I discovered that for myself, to allow these setbacks, right? Because it's a lot of it is mental, and feeling where we live in this world of like perfectionism in a sense. And I was actually
Hmm.
thinking about this today. It just popped up in my head that life is messy,
Yeah.
but we're taught that it has to be perfect. And no wonder everyone has this like, you have to have this, you have to do this. And it's like every corner there's someone telling you that you have to be something different than you are.
Hmm.
So really, allowing yourself to be in the messy, in a sense, life is can be really messy,
Yeah.
and you're not going to know everything, and everything's not going to heal miraculously overnight. And let go of that, I guess, mindset in a sense that I want it now and it needs to happen now, right? Because if you're holding on, so for instance, I didn't start, healing journey until I was in my 30s, well, late 20s, and then in my 30s even more so. And I had 30 years of holding on, 25, 30 years of holding on to all of that crap.
Mm.
And in order, it's not going to happen and just disappear overnight. Yeah, I found tools that work
Right.
faster than a lot of other tools and work, on a different level, because I was able to find it that worked for me. But my journey is not going to be same for somebody else's. So, I think that also the comparison thing, right?
Yeah, we set unrealistic expectations for ourselves.
Right. But where do we get that from?
Yeah.
Right? We get it from society putting everything on, so we're supposed to be a specific way. And
Hmm.
by this age, you have to have this in your life. And, It's just so unrealistic. And each person is so different, and each person's mind is so different. And if we were all taught that, I'm sure most people would not be depressed,
Yeah.
right? So I guess it's important to just give yourself some room to heal.
Yeah, that grace. Yeah, we
Yeah.
as a society really look at our peers and our community for validation.
Yes.
Um, but often, us survivors, we find that strength in connecting with people, especially people that have those similar experiences.
Right.
Um, how has the community or the peer support played a role in your healing process?
Um, I mean, I say like I did things a little differently.
Yeah.
So for me, it was more about my own inner journey. And then once I started realizing that I am not the only one, that I did meet, I mean, I through my journey, obviously, I met people that have had, similar stories in a sense of, because, I mean, the world is a walking trauma. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to not find somebody who has had some type of trauma in their life.
Hmm.
And it's just finding those who have, come to that conclusion in their lives that they don't want to live that anymore,
Right.
and finding the positive reinforcements, I guess, in a sense of, oh, this person got through it, right?
Right.
So then that means there's a possibility that I can too. And that's what probably kept me going.
Mm.
Um, Especially in the very beginning when I was starting the journey, was seeing other people and knowing their story, their hardship, and what they went through. In a sense, it helped me connect. And not that I was like actually connected to them, but just hearing their stories helped me. And reading the books and having those deep discussions in the books, and reading that and hearing other, I say it's all about hearing other people's stories and connecting in that way more than
Hmm.
anything. It was for me. Then it was like physical people around me,
Right.
until I started becoming a coach. And then all my clients who are attracted to me are because of my story.
Mm.
So, I became what I used to seek out, in a sense, that helped, that motivation. I become that motivation for others,
Mm.
as I, suck, was looking for and tried to have those leaders in my life that have been through it and lived
Hmm.
through it and are thriving from it.
Sounds kind of like it came full circle.
Yeah, it did. And I
Maybe
just
that was
realized
your
that.
purpose.
No, and I just realized that. I think it was like last week. After so many years, I'm like, oh, wait,
You
wow.
needed to be an advocate so
Yeah.
people would have someone to talk to.
Yes.
I
Yeah. I
think
mean, that's
that's beautiful.
ultimately, yeah, it's been my journey. In the beginning, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to help me, I got to help others tue. So
Hmm.
it was like 2 years after I began my own spiritual awakening and my own diving deep into the realms of the darkness, was when I realized, okay, well, when I'm ready and I have healed, because there's always that thing, you can't heal others unless you heal yourself. Well, that's not actually true. And I'd like to debunk that for people.
Yeah, I've always
I
hated that
am
saying.
proof of it. No one is 100% healed, especially if they had trauma.
Exactly.
It is an every single day work. I mean, it gets easier and easier and easier and easier every day, and it becomes really quick and easy when you go through problems, or you realize things aren't triggered anymore as they were before. So
Hmm.
it does get easier, but at the same time, there's going to be something that's going to trigger you. There's going to be something that pops up in your head from the past. There's going to be all self-sabotage that comes up, and it's just natural.
Hmm.
And it's something that we have to realize, that how to get to that tools, right? What tools do I need in order so that doesn't take over again?
All right.
And making sure that you have those tools available And sometimes it is having an accountability partner or friend that
Mhm.
knows you so well. And I say I'm very, very fortunate to have that in my life, that I can reach out to specifically one person, um, and she holds me accountable, and she speaks truth, and
Mm.
she helps me, she be to remind me that, oh, you've been through this before, you can get you know what you're doing,
Yeah,
you
that's
know
incredibly valuable.
yes, it is. It's to have that one person, as to say I'm extremely fortunate. And I'd say, if anything, find that, right?
Mhm.
And if you have to pay for it, pay for it. It's worth every moment of it. I am fortunate I don't have to pay for it, but I pay for love. I pay in love.
Yeah, different currency, it works.
Right, exactly. Because I do that for her,
Right?
as well. So we do it for each other.
That mutual support.
Yes, exactly. So it really is about that, and that can finding that connection for whatever it is that works for you.
Right. So I think you kind of already answered my last question, which was just kind of like, do you have any recommendations for listeners looking to find support? But I think you've kind of already answered that. Um, but do you have like any last thoughts? Anything else you want to share?
I mean, it's really about your own personal journey, and I think people forget that. And especially with the society that we're compared to everybody else, and we have
Mhm.
to be this specific way. We have to, it's like, you can't work this 9 to 5 job. You have to work by yourself. Don't be those people. But at the same time, well, maybe that's you.
Yeah.
And, finding what works for you, going deeper within you, and stop worrying. I mean, that was hard, harder than it seems, but yeah, stop worrying about what other people see you as. Stop worrying about what, who you're trying to please. I mean, the hardest part is that, because when we're children, first thing we want to do is please our parents.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the trauma ends up being through that. And then we grow up as adults, and we feel like we still have to have validation outside of ourselves instead of validation inside ourselves, because we're not taught that as children.
Amen.
And so a lot of it stems from that childhood traumas and society upbringing and religious upbringing, and going deep within that and really finding someone that you can work for, whether it be a hypnotherapist, a life coach, a therapist, whatever that looks like for you. But make sure that you're going deep within yourself to really discover who you are as a human being, not what someone else says you are, not what religion says you are, not what brings that for you. And I think people miss that part, right?
Mhm.
Because of, I mean, it's easy because, I
Oh
mean, look
yeah.
at the society we live in.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the school system, unfortunately, is embeds it in us to
Yeah.
be a specific way. And you know it's not how, and they wonder why depression rates are so high in children. Well,
Yeah. It's all right there if you pay attention.
yes, yes. And once you have that, your eyes open, it's hard to not see it. And my biggest struggle is not able to help everybody.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it's like, I just want to help
And you're
everybody.
like, I'm trying.
Yes, it's like standing back and watching them go on their journey. And but the number one thing that I'd have to say, yes, I did a lot of mysticism, and I studied hermetics, I studied Kabbalah, and um I studied woo woo. I'm a psychic medium, so I had a lot of connections there. But the one thing that really, I think, made an impact for me personally
Mhm.
was hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And because of the PTSD, CPTSD,
I have it too.
mouthful, mouthful, and the anxieties which go with all of that.
Yeah.
And I found that the hypnotherapy sessions on a regular basis um, really help transform the mindset,
Mhm.
because that's the part after the trauma that is really stuck.
Mm.
And so with my own, I was like, oh, I'm just going to try it,
Mhm.
and then because it helped so much for me, I became one, because I was like, oh, this is such a great other level, right?
Yeah.
To help people get deep into their own mind where they don't have to it says reoccur, like bring it back up,
Hmm.
right? Relive, that's what I was looking for. Relive the experience,
Right.
but in they relive it in a different way. And so having that trauma informed hypnotist or hypnotherapist in my mind is super, um, because it works on so many different levels. And I mean, obviously, there are other ways and other things that
Hmm.
help that, doing, all the energy work that I do as well to clear out. But that was probably my game changer. Like, it really was. I discovered it I want to say 5 years ago.
Mm.
And I've been through since then a lot of hardship, um, because life happens.
Right.
And I found myself having less and less and less depression, even though my life looked like it was turned upside down and chaotic. But because of the repetition
Hmm.
of the affirmations and the repetition of the hypnotherapy, and so ultimately comes down to that repetition
Yeah.
of your tools,
Yeah.
and that constant repetition, eventually things like break away, and it just gets easier and easier to live life.
Awesome. I think, especially the hypnotherapy, it doesn't get talked about quite as often. I swear by it as well.
Mm,
So I'm glad that you mentioned it. But
yeah.
overall, I'm so thankful that you shared so much of your story with us today, and you know all of your little wisdoms. They're so valuable. It's the whole point of this. So we really appreciate you. Of
Oh, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
course. Thank you so much for joining us today on Healing Echoes. We hope you, our listeners, found today's episode as enlightening and thought provoking as we did. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with someone who might benefit from these discussions. We'll be back with more engaging conversations and insightful content soon, so stay tuned. Until next time, take care and remember that your journey matters.